Nicholas, if I could call
Of
you
course, yes,
Mr.
please.
Commissioner. Nicholas, so we are now in the second decade of the Belt and Road.
Correct.
Maybe let's look back at where we got started, and then let's look at the present and the future. So how did we get started with the Belt and Road?
For sure. So, as you know, Belt and Road Initiative is a national policy announced by President Xi Jinping around 11 years ago. So we are now into the second decade of the what we call the golden decade of development. Since in the past 11 years, many projects, many policies have been implemented. But Belt and Road Initiative is as I said, it's a strategy, it's a policy with 5 principles, right? 5 connectivities at its core, which is policy, trade, finance, infrastructure, and people-to-people bond.
Right.
So, in its simplest term, it's about building multi-dimensional connectivity for long-term prosperity and regional stability. So, in the past 11 years, through various multilateral organizations, a lot of connectivity has been built. For example, I think the ones that we can see are infrastructure, right?
Yep.
Airports, seaports, highway, railway, high speed, so on and so forth. But also policy connectivity, such as free trade agreements, such as custom clearance agreements, so on and so forth. And of course, through that, we bring about trade, we bring about finance, and more people-to-people bond. We can think about Belt and Road Initiative as building the blood vessels in your body. With these connections built, then you can unlock regional hidden potential.
Yes.
Because, for example, if you have to take 30 hours to travel to a city whereby there's no roads, so you have to drive for 3 hours, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no 5G, there's no electricity, there's no water. Even if there's a lot of economic potential, it gets very difficult to attract foreign investment to help develop that region and unlock regional hidden potential. So Belt and Road Initiative is about unlocking these potential pockets of opportunities to create a stronger ties among different regions. And Hong Kong, for example, in the past 11 years, we have been very active in participating in a few areas, such as fundraising for these projects, our professional services, legal, obviously, and dispute resolution, architecture, engineering, so on and so forth, has been a key participant in the Belt and Road projects. And I think going forward, as announced by President Xi Jinping end of last year, when he announced the next 8 major steps in the next golden decade about what are the major areas that we should focus on. These 8 major steps can be summarized as is the age of private mobilization, because with the projects and policy being built and implemented in the past 11 years, opportunities that weren't available, weren't commercially viable, weren't bankable, are now suddenly possible. Because the cost of doing business, both politically and commercially, has been dramatically decreased. And that's why Hong Kong has a key part to play, because we are the PPP center, we are international financial center. And at the same time, it's about bringing about the people closer together. People-to-people bond is the fundamental principle of any global trade or global collaboration. So whether it's through education or culture or other forms of people-to-people connection, would also be a key focus. And I think that's also something that Hong Kong can offer.
If we look at the time and space of how the Belt and Road Initiative was announced, in the historical backdrop, what happened in about 2013?
So 2013, as we all remembered, it's the age or golden age of globalization, right? No one would argue that we should not do more globalization. It's a relatively peaceful time. Different regions relatively stable. And at that point, when Belt and Road was announced, there's about 60 odd countries signed up at the beginning. Today, there's over 150, plus 30 international organizations. But when that first begun, I don't think many of us grasped the idea of why are we building all these extra connectivity? Why are we building all these policy connectivity or people-to-people connectivity when we are already doing it? But then if you take that vision and apply it to today's sort of world situation, the condition that we're living in today, whether we're facing economic or political challenges around the world,
Yes.
it becomes extremely relevant now. Because of these connectivity built, we're able to continuously to do more trade, continuously to work with our partners in the region that we share common values, that we share common interest in a relatively peaceful and stable and long-term manner. But without these connectivity built, in the past decade, we won't be able to sort of see the opportunities that we are now seeing. I mean, people are talking about Global South, we're talking about Belt and Road, we're talking about BRICS, but all these won't be possible if those connectivity, those hard work, so to speak, were done in the past. So now, of course, a lot of my friends don't agree, but I do think that we're not just in the golden decade of Belt and Road, but we are in the harvest period. I'm not saying that now it's the time for us to lay down our hands and not do anything, but it's the harvest period where private mobilization, private participation is key because of these connectivity. These opportunities are very real and bankable. And that's why Hong Kong has a strong role to play now for private, for professional services, for commercial enterprises.
So some say international trade is the bloodline of economies.
Correct.
So, with this vision from presidency, how has it contributed to economic trade? Do you have a figure that you can share?
The trade continuously grow year on year, about, I think, a 2 to 5% growth for China and Belt and Road countries. But for Hong Kong, for example, since 2013, our total merchandise trade with Belt and Road countries surged 60%.
60%.
And if you look at it compared to other regions
Yes.
that's not Belt and Road, that's almost 4 times the growth rate.
Wow.
So because of these physical, political connectivity done, we can see the desire, the demand to do trade. It's there because the threshold has gone down. And this trend is dramatically increasing. But at the same time, we're also seeing a lot of companies from Belt and Road countries coming into Hong Kong and setting up base. That is also a trend going up. So to date, we have about close to 1,200 companies that set up office either as regional headquarter or regional branch office in Hong Kong from Belt and Road countries, using Hong Kong as a base for their projects and to tap into the entire region as well. But I think going forward, we're also looking at exporting professional services, export service trade. I think that is also an area that Hong Kong has a strong sort of value add to our neighbors.
Perhaps, Nicholas, could you maybe share some highlight of the 8 major steps that we'll be undertaking together, and perhaps with reference to what we could do in Hong Kong to contribute, especially the lawyers and business people here?
As our chief executive has mentioned, Hong Kong's role is very clear. It's the super connector, and more importantly, we're the super value adder. So often we get asked the question, what's value adder? Of course, it's not from the dictionary. It's a new term coined by our chief executive. Hong Kong has always been a service-based economy. I think for a lot of projects from either mainland China or in the Belt and Road countries, they need a lot of support to ensure that those projects are bankable, commercially viable, and also marketable. And because Hong Kong, we have a rich pool of professional talent, that becomes our value add. Why projects and companies going through Hong Kong can have a higher value. You can sell at a higher price, you can command a higher return. Whether it is mainland projects going through Hong Kong to Belt and Road countries, or Belt and Road countries, projects and companies going through Hong Kong into mainland or other parts of the world. And in terms of the 8 major steps, the first one is building a multi-dimensional Belt and Road. And I think that is very clear, and I think Hong Kong's role is very apparent. The multi-dimensional connectivity, it means apart from air, apart from sea, it's also digital. 5G, underwater submarine cables, is also financial connectivity. How can we bridge different financial product cross jurisdiction? For example, in finance side, we're doing a lot of new products such as the Saudi ETF, such as the exchange, and Hang Seng Index have a bond ETF. In Thailand, so on and so forth. HKMA, we have a prompt pay with FPS to build that financial connectivity. So I think a multi-dimensional connectivity network is something that Hong Kong has often been the backbone or riding as a hub. So that's something that I think we can further add value, whether it is our third runway coming up with almost double the capacity to build new routes, both cargo and air passage, our maritime, Silk Road, our cargo business.
Nick, can I ask, has the war in Ukraine affected trade, using railways? And what would be done about that?
There's two sort of direction of Belt and Road. One is the Silk Road economic belt, which is the terrestrial, the land route.
Yes.
The other side is the 21st century maritime Silk Road, which is the sort of global south or the sea route.
Right. So the belt is the land and the road is actually the sea road.
It's actually the sea road.
Okay. All right.
The road is the sea, but the belt is actually not the road.
Yes.
So when we look at it, spreading from Mongolia, from Xinjiang, from Ningxia, and from different northern and northwestern province of China, we have different railway routes going.
Well, you mentioned Xinjiang as well.
Yes, going through to Germany. Spread across Europe. And of course, some of those routes, because of regional conflicts, they are affected. But the terrestrial roads have different access points and have different connectivities.
Yes.
But at the same time, because of the pressure put on the land route, we're seeing an immense growth on the maritime Silk Road. So, for example, we're seeing the increase in cargo volume along the maritime route through Sri Lanka, all the way to Djibouti up to the Red Sea, and all the way to Greece. And Greece becomes another port that transfers back to land. And it goes to Hungary, and then Hungary goes to the rest of Europe. So when we look at the connectivity, it's not a singular route, but it's actually multi-layered, multi-dimensional, multi-directional route. So in order to strengthen that, we must continue to work on it. So we cannot rely on any one single route.
Right.
Otherwise it gets, as history has told us a couple of years ago, it's very dangerous and
could be a point of failure.
A point of failure, and it's also put a lot of pressure on regional economies. I recall, when the conflict first started, energy prices gone up, inflation gone up in some parts of the world, and that definitely not, causing not economic stability. So I think that is definitely something that why we're stressing on the multi-directional, multi-dimensional connectivity. And then I'll just, as you mentioned, I'll quickly run through, support open economy. Of course, Hong Kong, we have a key role to play. As we all know, we're actively trying to get into RCEP. We have signed close to 20 FTAs. We have more than 20 IPPAs, and we opening more and more overseas office around the world. We're very happy to announce that this year we will be opening a new ETO in Kuala Lumpur and also new ETO in Riyadh. But at the same time, we're also opening 2 new offices with our Invest Hong Kong consultancy office in Egypt and Turkey. And at the same time, our TDC office will have 2 more in Cambodia and Bangladesh. I think building this regional connectivity and building new connectivities, because I think Hong Kong, our trade routes, our travel routes have often been very robust, been very international. But there are some regions in the Belt and Road Initiative that we have yet to explore, that we have yet to deep dive.
Such as?
For example, Middle East, apart from Saudi Arabia and UAE, there's Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and there's also Egypt. And I think up to North Africa or even Sub-Saharan Africa, there are many opportunities that's yet to tap. Unlike other initiative, I think, for Belt and Road, it's very difficult for us to get there if there's no flights. It's not like I can swim or walk or drive there. So I think air connectivity is definitely a key focus, and we're very happy. This year, with the help from the Air Silk Road Task Force, we will be resuming the first flight with Cathay Pacific to Riyadh on the 28th of October. So myself, I'll be taking the first flight back to Riyadh and to attend this year's conference as well. There's a FII conference in Riyadh, and of course. Carrying out high quality Belt and Road cooperation, which is the PPP bankable argument that we made. Green development, I think green development is also something that Hong Kong will play a key role, because Hong Kong is not just green finance, it's not just green innovation, but we have the whole ecosystem, the whole value chain. Because the green finance is pegged with the green taxonomy, the green standard, which is provided by and strengthened by the green professional services, which are then enabled by green innovation. And of course, the finance also support the innovation. So this ecosystem of sort of fulfilling or self-expanding economic engine, it's very attractive to a lot of Belt and Road countries, because they want to do hydrogen, they want to do EVs, but they lack investment or they lack talent. But Hong Kong, we are quite unique in a way. We have all three, and those three are each supporting each other in an ecosystem. And of course, we have technological advances, people-to-people bond. So for Hong Kong government, each year we have 150 Belt and Road scholarships, attracting students from Belt and Road countries to come to Hong Kong to study university. But at the same time, through the university network and also private network, each year, university students coming in from Belt and Road countries, there's close to 2,500. So Hong Kong as an education hub, as a talent hub, has been attracting a lot of Belt and Road talent. And of course, then the argument comes, how can we keep, how can we explore, how can we integrate and work better with these talents that's already in Hong Kong. And of course, we have youth exchange programs. Each year, we have about 1,600 sponsored youth exchange programs for Hong Kong youth to go to Belt and Road regions to do exchange, internships, so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have the point number 7, which is quite special and unique to Hong Kong, promote integrity-based Belt and Road cooperation. And of course, Hong Kong, our ICAC has been a leader in that area. I think ICAC so far has already provided training programs and capacity building for over 30 Belt and Road countries. And of course, we work very closely with SFC. We work very closely with different organizations in Hong Kong to showcase, and also I think this is where dispute resolution, this is where the legal contracts also come into play as well. How can that integrity-based system and practice be a best practice guide for developing nations when they are trying to get international capital, when they're trying to do high quality development, when they're trying to have bankable projects that attract international capital, they need to be high integrity based. And of course, at the end of the last point, and it's about strengthening the cooperation. And that is why each year we have a Belt and Road Summit, which is recognized as our country's significant deliverable on promoting Belt and Road. And this year, it will be on the 11th and 12th of this September, which is in a couple of weeks' time. This year, we are, apart from a focus on ASEAN and Middle East, we'll also have a focus on Central Asia and also other new regions. I encourage everyone here to get online and registered for our Belt and Road Summit this year. And Belt and Road Summit every year, it's around middle of September. But radiating from that summit, there's a series of different events, such as the Belt and Road Week. I think there's about 10 to 20 events by different organizations, and also a series of non-business events. For example, the different musical orchestra, there are different cultural organizations doing different Belt and Road cultural performances and offerings. But at the same time, government funded a and started and organized a festival called Asia Plus. And Asia Plus has over 100 events in the course of 3 months, starting September to November, celebrating Belt and Road cultures, such as Middle East or Central Asia. So strongly urge everyone to participate.
Nicholas, you've been to quite a few of these countries now.
Yes.
As a commissioner, earlier as an architect, as a businessman. Do you see what are the common pain points and how do people overcome them?
So when I was practicing as an architect and actually participating in these Belt and Road projects, the key pain point is back then, a lot of the projects are done G2G. Now there's more B2B private projects. But when there's G2G or G2B projects, when these investments or these companies do projects on the ground, they don't get used to the standards. They don't get to get used to the local culture. So we see a lot of cases is a project as it being pushed forward. There's a lot of disputes along the way. Disputes on the standards, disputes on the quality of finish, disputes on the methodology of doing things, and that's a huge learning curve. That there's a cost to pay, and I think that's why Hong Kong has a strong role because our professional services are very international. We have dealt with different standards across different jurisdictions. Our Hong Kong professionals also have immense amount of experience in mainland China and also the rest of the world. So us being, the project manager or the mediator or the overall service provider gives a very strong argument to ensure that these projects are successfully delivered. And I think organization, let's say such as AALCO, is extremely important because these pain points already happened. So when people are now continuing with their projects or jumping to new projects, for the peace of mind for different parties involved in a Belt and Road projects, it will give them a lot of comfort if they understand, okay, why do I want to use Hong Kong as a base for dispute resolution? What are the advantages? And through that, what can they get from the Hong Kong Financial Center? What can they get from the Hong Kong professional services sector to ensure that their projects are done in a high quality manner and also in a successful manner that delivered successfully on time and on budget. And I think in the past when we're moving extremely fast paced, the notion of dispute resolution might not be the number one concern. But as you run through a few projects or a few generations of projects, then you realized, actually having this based makes a lot of difference.
Can't be an afterthought.
Can't be an afterthought. But now it makes perfect sense. So when we look at the future of Belt and Road, as I mentioned, is the age of PPP. I think Hong Kong has a unique role to play, and AALCO has a unique role to play because of the multilateral trust. I'll give you an example. A lot of companies, whether it's from mainland China to Belt and Road countries or Hong Kong companies to Belt and Road countries, we see there's a huge sort of impression when the local company or government see that, this company is from Hong Kong. First of all, they already trust, Hong Kong is trustworthy, it's high quality, it's high standard. You can deliver quality service at the right time at the reasonable price. But at the same time, they will also understand under Hong Kong, under one country, two system, using us as a dispute resolution center has a lot of value add. And why putting their projects in Hong Kong? Because it can get them international capital at the same time. So to quote that example, is a Hong Kong company, went to Indonesia, they bought a bank, and obviously you have to go through that, regulators and also the license body to do a lot of vetting. But when they found out, early on that it's a Hong Kong company and it already satisfied the Hong Kong regulation, the process gets really smooth and fast.
Fantastic.
Because if you can satisfy the Hong Kong standard, there's not many standards out there you can't satisfy.
So with that, can I maybe open the floor for questions and comments? maybe let's start with the Vice President of the Law Society of Hong Kong, Mr. Amirali Nasir. Yes.
Nick, how do you see
the increased use of digitization, internet, World Wide Web, and AI as integrating within the Belt and Road Initiative? Because obviously we have the Belt and Road, terrestrial, and marine, but the world's moving on to a much more cyber world. And how would you see integrating that within your metaphor of the blood vessels?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So the physical and the policy connectivity, so blood vessels, but the actual trade, whether it is digital trade, whether it is a physical goods trade or service trade, that's the blood flow. We have to keep the blood flow going. So I think going forward, whether it is AI or not, I think digital economy and digital trade will play a very important part in Belt and Road. But when I look at the Belt and Road Initiative, it's not either or. So for example, at the very core of multilateral collaboration, we have BRICS, we also have RCEP, and the largest collaboration platform is our Belt and Road Initiative. And cutting across all three, we have different AI platforms to try to create new standards. So it comes back to Hong Kong's role, because what can Hong Kong do and better participate and add value? I really believe that is the standard setting. Cutting across all three of these concentric circles is a new standards that can be applied to different jurisdictions. And when we talk about AI, when we talk about digital trade, I think a lot of the resource and a lot of the conversation right now being put in is on setting new standards. How can AI, whether it is the practitioners' AI regulation standards, or is it different parts of AI, for example, whether it is Web3 or is it AI technology on the expert regulation side, that's something that I think Hong Kong can add value to. And I think that's just on the digital side. On the other side is I think green is also another side, with the green taxonomy, green standard. That's something that we also want to add value. Because Hong Kong in the past, we have benefited from being an international city. But I think going forward, Belt and Road is a sort of new ballpark, a new game that we can see how new standards can be applied. And I think we're definitely at the forefront of it.
Maybe to add on that, maybe Nicholas can also talk about the recent third Belt and Road Forum, CEO Forum, presidency announced initiative of a global AI governance.
That's right, that one, yeah.
I see a lot of suggestion about, AI, of course, would, make a big difference to our economies and our lives. And so our host country of AALCO, China, in the AI governance suggestion is to remember it should be people-centric. It should be technology should be serving the people, not the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So traceability, all that.
On that, I've been speaking just now to the food conference. One person from Malaysia came to speak here, and one of those tech and adding tech culture, meeting people was halal blockchain, which enables the consistency, quality of halal food across different jurisdictions. And they were thinking of how Hong Kong can contribute because it has better technology and the ability to create unification across the different jurisdictions. And so that's one example of cultural cross-connection.
No, you're absolutely right, because I think halal standards also varies within different Muslim regions in the world. And obviously having blockchain on it, applied to it, you can trace origin. But at the same time, you can also see the interoperability of the different halal standards within that greater halal community. I think that is a powerful argument. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas and Nick. I think this forum is very well timed. Like Nicholas pointed out, the Belt and Road Initiative is 11 years old. It's a decade ago, and 2013 was the golden age of globalization. And I'm sure some of you would agree with me that the world has changed a lot since then.
Just a bit.
Now we have two wars, one in Europe and one in the Middle East, really, in the Belt and Road countries. And Hong Kong has changed a lot too. In 2013, I think the Hang Seng Index was, I think, closer to 30,000. Today, I think it's probably, I haven't checked, but I think 17,000. And Hong Kong being the international financial center, we were really at the, the critical point with a hub for finance, definitely, hub for legal services, professional services, accounting, engineering, architectural, you name it. But the key to it and the position that central government gave us is that we have to be international this, international that, and the super connector. From what I can see, Hong Kong really could was a super connector for connecting a lot of Belt and Road projects to international capital, to a diverse pool of investors, because here in Hong Kong, we have the bankers, we have the fund managers, and all the professional services to package a deal and to fund it. And I believe that a lot of Belt and Road projects would have a funding gap, and Hong Kong would be the ideal place to fund it. Now, I would like to hear from you whether that position has changed a bit since 2013, because, as I said, Hong Kong used to be the #1 IPO center. We still are I think, leading green finance center. But is it that easy to raise finance today? And well, last year the funds raised, I think, was only less than $6 billion. US dollars. So you think that is our position now, or is our ability now to connect these Belt and Road projects to global capital reduced because of geopolitics? And what does the future hold?
No, you're absolutely right. Are we living in a more challenging world today than we did back then? For sure, 100%. I think that is why Hong Kong have to be more proactive. We have to go out there instead of standing around waiting around in Hong Kong. And Belt and Road Initiative will be one of the key economic growth engine, not just for us, but for, I think, Global South. And I think in the past, Hong Kong may rely on certain parts of the world, certain regions, certain countries, certain economies, being our major economic contributor or our partner. But going forward, I think the opportunities are immense in the Belt and Road region. Of course, us as the international financial center, we still have full faith that the system is intact and stronger than before. But at the same time, we must be more proactive going out. And that is why you see in the past couple of years, through different bureaus and ministry in Hong Kong, there are many delegations going out and trying to attract companies coming to Hong Kong to do IPOs, companies coming to Hong Kong to do green bond, green finance, green facilities, so on and so forth. But that process takes time. But increasingly, we're putting more and more boots on the ground outside to build these long-term economic relationship or business relationship in order for Hong Kong, in the long term, we have different regions that we can tap for economic growth. But we're very hopeful because I think ASEAN is a very low-hanging fruit. Through ASEAN, we already have close to 100 ASEAN companies listed in Hong Kong Stock Exchange. We're seeing that trend growing up. To answer your question on green finance, green bond, yes, we're still #1 in Asia, and I think that is still got a lot of potential to grow. And at the same time, in these developing nations, they're not just looking for finance at the same time. They're looking for finance, service, and innovation as a whole package. And I think that is what Hong Kong can offer. But at the same time, I think Hong Kong, we can, apart from the traditional international financial center, how do we define the financial center? Apart from IPOs or Hang Seng Index or trading volume. In terms of our insurance market, extremely robust, still going very strong. Renminbi market very strong. Green bond, as you mentioned. But at the same time, I think we are perfectly positioned to attract sovereign wealth fund to set up their base in Hong Kong. And when we look at it, PIF has an office in Hong Kong. RD has an office in Hong Kong. I think more and more of these sovereign wealth funds are looking to use Hong Kong as an asset management center, a wealth management center, and that will create a larger sort of buy-side demand in Hong Kong for asset AUM, and I think that's just one part of it. But having said that, we need to be more proactive, and that's why I think AALCO is going to Egypt and South Africa.
Yes, all welcome. Yes.
Opening new markets.
Together.
Our summits were obviously expanding to new regions. Myself, I've led a delegation this year to Hungary, Kazakhstan, and Xinjiang. We also believe in a new economic development model called region to region, R2R. So in the past, when we look at unlocking Belt and Road potential, we look at ASEAN, we look at Middle East, we look at single countries, right? We cherry pick them for its own merits with Hong Kong in relation to Hong Kong. But that is one side of the story. What's the other side? Is we have to look at it, we have to take a step back and look at it in a more holistic view, which is region. So for example, when I look at Kazakhstan, when I look at Central Asia, lots of economic potential going forward. But of course, Xinjiang is also right across it with huge economic potential. When I look at Laos, which the chief executive just led a delegation there, it's connected to Yunnan, right, with a high speed to Kunming. And now from Kunming to Vientiane in Laos takes 7-8 hours, the high speed. Traditionally, it takes 3 or 4 days. When I look at Vietnam and Thailand, I look at Guangxi, Nanning, that connection. When I look at Middle East, I look at Ningxia, which is the Muslim community within China. So this region-to-region model can not only attract economic benefit from one side, but we see that Hong Kong being that hub, we can add value to both sides. Because Silk Road Economic Belt, which is the region I explained, Shanxi, Xinjiang, Ningxia, Guangxi, Yunnan, Sichuan, that region, they have a lot of economic potential that yet to realize. But what they need is marketability, they need bankability, they need service to help them upgrade. And that is where Hong Kong come in. And I'm very glad when, during the mission, which is a historic visit by the chief executive, first ever chief executive to visit Laos and Cambodia, and reaping over 50 MOUs, and very concrete MOUs this time. So we're very excited. And just in the past few weeks since we're back, Laos and Cambodian ministers and business delegations has been coming to Hong Kong. So there are many exciting new opportunities we're discussing.
Hong Kong has always, in the past, been able to raise capital 200 times that of our friends in Singapore. So I don't think that has changed. You need money to do a lot of things in terms of developing technology. You need people, you need good policy initiatives. And Hong Kong is in a sweet spot as a under one country, two systems. Lots of opportunities. But let's pass the floor to Andrews.
Oh, sorry. Andrew Wells, Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce and Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce. So I have a two-part question. The first part is very general, and Nicholas would have heard it hundreds of times before. When you talk about the good sides of the present stage of BRI, despite the challenges, a lot of these, when I try to present this to my friends and contacts, they'll say, well, yes, but these would exist anyway. So yes, you're doing very well in the Middle East, or you're doing very well in ASEAN, but how much of that is actually structurally due to the BRI? Maybe the region-to-region thing you just mentioned has something to do with it, but I'd be interested to hear what you said about that. I think it's important, not so much for ordinary day-to-day SME to SME transactions, but more when you're dealing with international perceptions and selling the concept of the BRI to a skeptical world. Now, the second part of the question is a subset more specific. We've had a couple of comments and questions about the Middle East. I'd like to hear your current views on where we are with following up on the, now a few years ago, initiative by President and then the Chief Executive to the Middle East. My own feeling is that we're still miles and miles and miles away from any concrete economic benefit flowing into Hong Kong, and that the reasons for that are primarily cultural on both sides. I've been watching this for over 50 years, and I'm actually not sure how and when they can be overcome, despite the ETOs and all the other things that you've mentioned. So how do you see that? So a two-part question. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. No, you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to track the concrete or specific economic benefit brought about by Belt and Road, specifically to Hong Kong. But we're seeing within the Belt and Road community, our ODI has increased 60% over the past 11 years, which is three times the growth rate than other regions, and merchandise trade increased. Of course, number of flights to Belt and Road regions has increased, and also number of destination to Belt and Road countries have increased. And of course, we have other forms such as education, cultural exchange, so on and so forth. But Belt and Road Initiative is an inclusive collaboration platform, and Hong Kong's role is a hub. In other terms, we can also think of Belt and Road Initiative as a driver for global collaboration, which will always help what you're doing anyway. But specifically, can I say which project is which? Then that would be very specific. And of course, last year, because Hong Kong are now actively investing into the Belt and Road, HKMA has raised a $2 billion USD fund with Silk Road Fund in China to participate in Belt and Road projects, doing direct deals and also PE-related deals to participate. But these are all profit-making projects. At the same time, you mentioned the second part of your question. I think what you mentioned is extremely valid and true. In a way, it's a long-term investment. We can't expect to enter a region or a new culture and reap instant economic benefit. I think that's neither respectful or realistic. But the notion is we are committed to build a long-term relationship, and we're committed long-term. And apart from the Dubai ETO office, we're opening a Riyadh one to put more boots on the ground. We have listed the first ever Saudi ETF in Hong Kong end of last year. We will be very shortly launching the first Hong Kong ETF in Saudi Arabia Stock Exchange. Is this the end of the story? God, no. This is far from being the first part of the chapter. But people need to be educated. We don't understand them enough, just as they don't understand us enough. And that is why we brought FII over at the end of last year. And that's why we are also bringing a delegation and supporting and participating in FII in Riyadh this year as well with the flight resumption. But that is just the beginning of a long story. And, Middle East is not just GCC. It's also Egypt. It's also Morocco, is also other parts of the region. And we're actively looking into that area. And that's why when Nick told me he's going to South Africa, I was like, I wish I could join, but it's going to be an incredible mission. I think Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, these are new markets that we have to explore. Just to share, in February, we signed a IPPA with Bahrain. And of course, Bahrain relationship with Saudi Arabia within the GCC is also quite special. I would say a special relationship. And I think Bahrain also have some international capital and trying to do as a satellite finance center. I think that's also a very interesting proposition for Hong Kong. So we are excited. There will be many offices opening in that region going forward as a bit of a teaser. But we are committed to put more boots on the ground.
Nicholas talked about writing the first chapter, but two people in this room have wrote a whole book on the legal dimensions of the Belt and Road. And he has his hand up. The Dean of the Chinese University of Hong Kong Law School.
Hi, my name is Lutz Christian Wolf. I'm the Dean of CHK Law. Thank you for your explanations. You mentioned the Hong Kong as an educational hub, and I fully subscribe to that. You also mentioned the scholarships, the Belt and Road scholarships, which I think are very important. There's much more Hong Kong has to offer. The very robust legal system, our world-leading legal education. I'm not only saying that because I'm the dean of a law school here. I think we are really, the law schools are really in the top ranks of the world. So there's a lot to offer. And that, of course, can contribute to the development of the Belt and Road Initiative, because if you're talking about all the disputes that can emerge, that has a lot to do with different understandings, a lot with different legal cultures and so on. And if we bring in more people to study in Hong Kong, if our teachers, our law teachers are sent out to South Africa, to other parts of, to other Belt and Road countries, that of course can facilitate the development of this whole great project. So my question is, are there plans to expand in the educational aspects of this Belt and Road initiative in Hong Kong? Are there more scholarships? Are there more initiatives? Can we expect that? Because I think it would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
I can't agree with you more. I think Hong Kong value proposition as an education hub, I think, is pretty well known. You know, with our top 5 QS 100 universities, we have 5 of them. To answer your question, so we have each year 150 scholarships funded by the government, introducing or having students, recruiting students from Belt and Road countries. But the UGC-funded university, plus the university-owned scholarship programs, whether it's public or private means, every year we have 2,500 students coming in. So the number one pain point that we're currently facing is universities coming to us saying they don't know where to recruit because they want to explore a greater diversity, a greater talent pool into the Belt and Road region. But their professors, their deans, or their admission office do not have the network or know-how or the sort of priority which areas or which countries to go first. So later this year, we'll be coordinating with the Council General's network in Hong Kong and also with our overseas network to create that natural matching to support Hong Kong UGC-funded universities to better have a better grasp on the different Belt and Road countries' foothold. So to create a much larger impact. So it's not just the money itself, but it creates a Belt and Road scholarship network. So I think that is one of the things that we're pushing for. Second is, we would love to have more scholarship, to answer your question. We increased it from 100 to 150 since last year's policy address, which is a 50% increase. But of course, if you look at the quantum 150, it doesn't look a lot. We are currently reviewing. However, we do believe that the room to grow, to consolidate resources in the university level, in the public-private level, would be much more sort of flexible and easier for us to consolidate resource, working with the university. That might be a better way to do it. But at the same time, we're also having internships and exchange programs for young students, for youth, Hong Kong going out to Belt and Road countries the other direction. And of course, we want to do more sort of encourage universities to do more joint research labs or overseas education centers. As you know, a lot of Hong Kong UGC-funded universities have different campuses within GBA. And increasingly now we're seeing different universities establishing a lab or a center, let's say in Central Asia, in Southeast Asia, and some soon in the Middle East as well. So we see that sort of research to educator, expert connectivity building on, which we're fully supportive. I think to have more scholarships in the short term would be difficult.
Actually, the networking aspect of this and the recruitment.
So end of this year, we'll be launching an event, and we'll definitely be looking forward to working with you. I think the network is important because we get a lot of inquiries from both sides. The countries at one time saying they heard of this, how can they get hold of it? The university, on the other hand, say, we don't have the network. I don't know how to get the students. Where are they from? So we'll do that.
I've said in private and in public, most recently at the COHK MBA program 2 Saturdays ago, that Hong Kong stands in the prime position to be the leading financial center for the global south. And today we're talking about Belt and Road, so I assume that one of the goals of Hong Kong should be the leading, and Nick mentioned innovation as well, financial center for the Belt and Road and the global south. Be that as it may, I'm also a lawyer. And I also deal with a lot of Belt and Road and Global South type companies that want to set up in Hong Kong, and there are real pain points for them when they come to Hong Kong. Simple things such as filing writ when you're not in Hong Kong. We have this very old registry system which requires people to be, to file in person at the counter, and otherwise you're rejected. And the rest of the world has moved on. Frankly, electronic filing is permitted in even much less premier jurisdictions than Hong Kong. Opening a bank account, for example, So my question to Commissioner Nick is there an office that maybe not your office, but I'm wondering whether your office might have a coordination office or a function with the chief executive or someone at the very top of Hong Kong's administration to try and look at all these little pain points which are making it difficult for the global south companies and the countries that we're trying so hard to court today to set up in Hong Kong. And I'm sorry to ask this as a Singaporean, but I guess our job is to make Hong Kongers keep on their toes, So
you guys are making us better. No, you're absolutely right. No, we need to constantly reinvent, and we also have to stay competitive. No, thank you for your question. Of course, we're constantly looking at the issues that you mentioned. The centralized facilitator for that particular issue within the government is by Invest Hong Kong. So the issues that you mentioned, we can connect offline later, and I'll introduce our colleagues to you and see how we can facilitate that. But you're absolutely right. I think e-government or digital governance has been a global trend. Hong Kong, in the past few years, we have been actively trying to play catch up and to do more through e-tax or e-filing or I'm Smart system. So as we all recall, back then, tax filing, it's by filling in a form. Although it's a very simple form, where you still have to fill in a physical form, but now you can do it online, and many more government services now are moving online. Some are already in testing phases. So we are committed to move everything digitally, effectively and efficiently. But specifically to the issue that you mentioned, we can connect after.
You want to talk about the Digital Policy Office?
Yes, so we also have a new, is it new? I think it's new. New digital office within the government to handle digitalization across the whole government service provision to the greater public. But basically the e-governance. So the commissioner will be in charge of reviewing and pushing that forward.
Okay, Commissioner Nicholas. Now, unimaginable things can happen. Say there's a crystal ball. 48 hours later, American and Chinese warships sinking each other. 36 hours later, Americans, Washington, D.C., is going to kick Beijing out of the SWIFT system and confiscating Chinese assets, like what it has done to Moscow. Okay, if it happens, what can AALCO do? What can your office do to embrace the fall to help our nation? Americans may want the Belt and Road Initiative to fail by all means. So, is there any firefighting plan? It's a far-fetched question. Sorry.
When that happens, I know where I'll be. So, it's an interesting question. I think, as I mentioned, the three concentric circles, BRICS, RCEP, and the Belt and Road Initiative. It's about building a multi-dimensional connectivity that's long-term and it's multi-directional. So if we look at the issue that you mentioned, I doubt any one of those moves would cut us off completely because of the work done in the past. You mentioned SWIFT, we have Enbridge. You mentioned other form of trade or transaction routes. We have stable coin. You mentioned different trading routes. That is why even within the maritime Silk Road, we have 3 different paths. In the terrestrial road, we have different paths. I think, yes, are there challenges in the world or potential threat? For sure. And that is why in the past decades, we have been trying our very best to build long-term partnerships. In Chinese, we always believe in 2 things. One is we need peace in order to trade, but we trade in order to create peace. And the second thing is we always look for the next friend. Unlike other regions, we never look for the next enemy. Our diplomacy has always been about who's our next friend. And I think because of these philosophies that we have been practicing in the past decades, yes, there will be people who want to have dispute, to have conflicts in the world. That's probably human nature. But I'm an optimistic person. I believe when that happens, even more people will want to collaborate. Even more people will yearn for peace. And when we look at the Belt and Road Initiative, it started with 60 countries. Today it's 153, and there's only 195 countries in the world. I mean, that's majority of us. And I do believe, the sort of spirit of Belt and Road is about building common prosperity, riding on common interests and common values. And that has been the core pillar. If you talk to any of those Belt and Road countries, economies, companies, governments, they'll tell you the same story. Because when these mega projects are being built, these economic potential are being unleashed, parts of those proceeds have to go back to the country to build China aid projects, to do healthcare, to do education-related projects, reinvest, shared the sort of profits and the findings and the benefits with the local people. So we build long-term relations. And those kind of, the Belt and Road Initiative, the 5 connectivities, these are not something that just get cut off immediately. So for example, let's say you are Chinese and let's say your wife is US, and let's say the US and China is going to war. It's not that easy for you, is it? It's
I don't know American wife.
So it's that bond, both physical and invisible bond, I think, that the Belt and Road Initiative is building. And this is something long-term. And maybe I'm optimistic or maybe I'm naive, but I truly believe that's what holds humanity together.
Powerful finish.